Hey, welcome everyone to KSE's Case Start, where we have honest, funny, and sometimes downright hilarious conversations with innovators, founders, and business leaders on their journeys from the ground up. We hope you'll find some hidden knowledge and inspiration as we extract key insights and expertise through the bad, the good, and the ugly of the entrepreneurial journey. I'm really glad to be joined here by a good friend, Billy Kang from LA Soju. Billy, before we get started, why don't you just introduce yourself for those that don't know you?
Billy Kang. I founded a company called LA Soju because I felt like there was a need for it, for something like it, especially with what's going on. And I've been at it for about 2 years. I've done so many things prior. I have a law degree. I worked in IT. I worked in Korea. I worked in fashion. I worked in franchise restaurants. And this is my latest, maybe last, venture. Yeah.
Awesome. And so, let's even like take it further back, right? Because I always like talking about, you know, how people got here, right? I think that's super important. I mean, you talked about like the work that you did, but where did you grow up? And like, did that affect you to become an entrepreneur? Like you went from law to, doing a bunch of different things. Like, so where did you grow up? And like, how do you think that changed the way you view the world?
First, I was born in Korea. Our family immigrated here when I was eight and a half. Grew up in Anaheim, Orange County, in California. Um, just like a lot of immigrant families, my parents had to go into business. And that business happened to be in the garment fashion industry. And so my parents were always, they worked hard. They worked many, many hours. They left the house before the kids were even awake. Um, I have two siblings. We'd wake up somehow, pack our stuff, you know, make breakfast, go to school together, get home, make a sandwich or have a cereal or one of the, I don't know if you remember TV dinners, but
Okay.
it's Hungry Man TV dinners. We
All
put
right.
it in the oven for 45 minutes. We'd eat, and at 7 o'clock they would come home.
All right.
Um, and so, from a young age, we had to do things by ourselves. And I think one of the things about the entrepreneurial spirit is to kind of take on that challenge and to do things by yourself and on
All
your
right.
own. So, um, growing up, you know, like I said, as a, immigrant family, you learn to do things on your own and you see it
All
in your parents too, right? So they just work
right.
hard. I'm sure they hope that they could have been around more for us, but they couldn't. I mean, we just had to make things meet,
All right.
so that we could survive and hopefully thrive.
All right. All right. And so like, it sounds like you obviously like you were telling about the immigrant story, right? And you grew up with parents that were working really hard, both to make ends meet, but also, to make a better life, right? In the States. And you mentioned that you went to law school. So it sounds like you took the classic path that, most Korean
Yeah.
parents wanted. And then now you ended up here. We'll take that story, in the next part of the conversation. But, why'd you choose law school? And then I guess the immediate thereafter is, why didn't you stay in law?
Um, and I'm gonna have to take a step back from that as well. When I was, I think, 15, I think freshman, sophomore year in high school.
Oh,
Um, and by this time, we've only been in the States for what, 7, 8 years.
all right.
So obviously our grades were not as good as it could be because, English was our
Yeah,
second language.
sure.
So grades were not as good. One night, parents come home, um, and they've been talking to other parents, other Korean parents at the same school, and the other parents are bragging about what kind of awards their kids were getting. So my parents, they came here hoping to make a better life. for all of us, and we weren't getting the grades. So they were ticked off, right? They were working hard. The only thing that they want was that their kids do well. And,
Right.
at that time, we weren't doing well. So they got upset and they made us write this kind of manifesto of sorts. What we're going to be when we grow up or where we're going to
Right.
go to school. Um, and because I was in trouble, I wanted to write down something that they wanted to hear. Which was, I said, when I go to college, I want to go to Berkeley because all my
Yeah.
parents, they didn't even talk about Harvard, Stanford,
Yeah.
UCLA, all they
Yeah.
talked about was Berkeley. So, to make them happy, to get it over with as soon as I can, I wrote, hey, you know what? When I go to college, I want to go to Berkeley. And then it ended up that I ended up going to Berkeley. So it's kind of like, it just happens.
It's like
Sometimes,
a self-fulfilling prophecy kind
well,
of.
yes, kind of, but
Yeah.
it's not like I did great in school. But I happened to get into Berkeley. Maybe they
Mhm.
felt sorry for me. Maybe they read that little letter that I
Oh,
wrote
I'm
to my
sure you did
parents.
well. Yeah.
And then even for law school, it was just kind of like, I graduated with an economics major. And with
Yeah.
an economics major, what are you going to do? And back then, um, being like an investment banker was not
Yeah.
as hot as it was during the 90s, late
Hmm.
90s, mid 90s. So I said, you know what, I got to do something.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, maybe I'll just go get another degree. And I happened to get into a decent school, Benjamin N. Cardozo in New
Uh-huh.
York. So I ended up going, and then yeah, that was that. And then I ended up moving to Korea soon thereafter, and then worked
Okay.
for a IT company. It was founded, some of these guys. It was founded by Jimmy Kim, Bernard
Uh-huh.
Moon, and Peter Chang, and they had what's
Uh-huh.
called Hey Anita. Hey Anita was kind of like a precursor to our Alexa now. So on the
Okay.
phone, you call, you go, Hey Anita, I need the weather. Or
Yeah.
Hey Anita, where is the best place to
Uh,
go get, a cheeseburger or whatever? And you
sure.
use that through the phone. Now we have the little Alexa little
Yeah.
machine, but back then all we had were phones and landline phones, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you went to law school, but then you decided to take kind of the entrepreneurial plunge. In a way, you decided to, in a way, go back to Korea. When was
Which is
that?
weird, right?
Yeah. But when was that? Like, that's like another like cycle in the journey. But what year was that when you went back?
I went to Korea in 1999.
Okay.
I actually went there because I was offered a job as a foreign legal consultant.
Okay.
That lasted 6 months.
Okay.
Lot of, but during those 6 months, I just met a lot of Korean Americans because in Korea there's a very tight knit group of Korean Americans because there's not that many, and they're all single. They're always going out to dinners,
Right.
drinking a lot of soju, obviously,
Yeah.
and so we just got to know each other, and then I was kind of recruited in a way to say, hey, there's this you know IT bubble. Why don't you join us
Yeah.
to help launch this company? So that's
Right.
how I ended up jumping on the venture
Yeah.
wagon. Yeah.
But it does sound like, the time was like peak bubble,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And like
Yeah.
startup like wasn't that big in Korea back then, right? Like that
It
was
was
pretty early
just
days.
getting big. It
Yeah.
was just
Yeah.
starting to get big.
Yeah.
Around 1999. Yeah,
Right.
2000.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
So it's
that
exciting,
journey, yeah. So
you
that
know,
journey kind of like you wrapped that up, but then you came back stateside, right?
yeah.
After that.
My parents had the garment industry. It was
Right.
doing what they were in the garment industry. It was doing really well.
Yeah.
Um, and they just wanted me to take over because
Okay.
there was a lot of money in it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. It was a big business. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that for about 12 years.
Okay.
Um, and then got into the franchise restaurant business. At one point, my partners and I, our group owned 9 Denny's restaurants as well as 5 Hooters
Yeah.
restaurants.
Right.
Yeah.
Why did you go from, I guess, after the garment, like what made you take the plunge into F&B? Like, I don't know if franchising is the same thing, but like,
Well,
you know,
it w- while I was in the garment industry, it's not like I quit the garment job or
all right.
business to do the restaurant business. It's just that it was more of an investment,
Uh-huh.
um, opportunity at that point.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was kind of doing both at the same time. But
Right.
the garment industry was it turned very sour in
Yeah.
2018. I don't even know if it recovered now, but
Yeah.
um, yeah. So I ended up quitting the garment business and
Right.
then went more into the restaurant franchise business. And then even that, you know, by the time like 2020, 2021 came around,
Yeah.
COVID,
Yeah.
everything just hit the fan, you know?
Right.
So at that time, I started to kind of, think about, okay, what can I do now? What
Right.
am I good at, you know?
Right.
And then this thing came around.
But like, would you say, I guess, like during this whole like kind of journey, right? Like, you went to Korea, you did legal consulting for 6, and then you saw the tech bubble boom, bust, etc. You came back, you saw a cycle of the garment industry kind of cycle through. Then you were doing a franchise investment, but then you hit COVID, right? Like,
Yeah.
of all the things I think that people have met in their path, particularly F&B, it seems like COVID's like the hardest thing they've ever experienced. Would you say that's one of the hardest things you've experienced, or have you seen harder?
No, that was the hardest. I mean, even the IT bubble popping,
Right,
um, nothing compares to COVID, right?
right.
So like Hooters restaurant, for instance,
Yeah.
um, on a daily basis, for like a year, we were doing like $350 in
Wow.
sales a day.
Okay. I did. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's hard to recover from that.
Right.
Um, and just things just didn't work out after that. So,
Right.
what are you gonna
Right.
do? It
Right.
is what it
Right.
is.
Right. And so after that, you're looking what you were good at. You're looking for what you were good at, what you were very familiar with, obviously. And LA Soju was born. So let's talk about LA Soju a little bit. We talked about your journey. What is LA Soju for the audience?
So LA Soju, we created this company because number one, there was this huge Korean boom. That's number
Yeah.
one. Number two was this huge boom in RTDs. RTDs
Mm-hmm.
it stands for ready to drink.
Right.
Things like Truly, White Claw,
Yeah.
these little flavored malt beverages with carbonation in a can. There was a huge boom in that. Um, and during that time, somebody approached me and said, "Hey, there's this soju company or soju distribution company. They need like a operator, president type.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and not that I ever operated or been in the soju alcohol business, but they figured that I have a lot of business experience and
Mm-hmm.
I loved soju, so you could combine the two, and you'd be good at it. Um, so I started talking to this company through their lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and our compensation package, it was, it took quite a while. Finalized it, and then I was hired. And then 4 days before I was to start, the owner of the company says, "Let's meet." And
Mm-hmm.
then he says, "I can't hire you."
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But like, what are you gonna do? That's
Right.
that's mine.
Yeah.
And then that's when my mind started to kind of, start thinking about, okay, I like this business. I was excited for it.
Yeah.
So I started coming up with these ideas. Um, but it was at a very early stage. And then during this time, somebody else who is non-Korean
Yeah.
approached me and said, and it was a friend of a friend, and we just had dinner. And he said, I want to start a soju company.
Yeah.
And I said, you're not Korean.
Yeah.
What do you know about soju? Why soju? And he
Yeah.
goes, he's been in the alcohol business for 20 some years. His
Yeah.
partner has been in the alcohol business for 40 some years. And they both came to the conclusion that soju is going to be the next big thing.
Yeah.
So, I'm giving him all of the ideas, even my idea, because, it was a kind of at the early stage. I didn't even know if I was going to do it.
Yeah.
I gave him the whole idea of RTDs, the Korean trend, even the name LA Soju. I said,
Right.
make it simple. But at the end of dinner, he said, that's something that I don't think I know how to do. It's too big of a scale. It's B2C. It's just too much branding and marketing. And
Yeah.
so he says, why don't you do it? And then right there, I go, oh, shoot, you know what? I could do this.
Right.
So that's what kind of jump started the whole thing. And then I talked to my partner, and I said, "Hey, there's this idea. I have this idea. What do you think?" Love the idea. I said, "But we have to change the name because
Yeah.
LASoju.com is taken." Because I actually looked it up the night before,
Oh, okay.
and then they said, "Oh my God, I own LASoju.com."
No way. Your partner did. What?
So we thought, oh my gosh, how could that be? So we thought it was very serendipitous.
Yeah.
So we started on that journey about 2.5 years ago. Um, and then, I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of friends who have been very, very successful in business.
Yeah.
So I reached out to them and said, hey, I have this idea. What do you think? Do you think it'll be well, received? And I would say out of 10 people, 9 said one was a maybe. The other 9 was, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And out of the 9, 4 or 5 of them said, you know what? If you start it, I want to put money behind it.
Okay.
So it was kind of like a accidental pitch to them
Okay.
because
All
I
right.
really
All right.
wanted their feedback.
Sure.
Just
Sure.
being
Sure.
genuine. I said, hey, what do you think about this idea? They loved it. And like I said, 4 or 5 of them
Yeah.
decided that they wanted to put money behind it. One of them was like, hey, that's an interesting idea. Let me run it through my friends. And then he talked to one of his friends and he came back to me and said, hey, my friend thinks that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So he wants to invest. I go, wow, that's great. And then he goes, by the way, I'm investing too. I said, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we had a very short fundraising period.
Right.
And we raised like $500,000 literally in like 3 weeks. Just,
Right.
me talking
Just
to
talking to
my
people.
friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a testament, I think, to the reputation and the branding that you built personally, that you were able to do that. Like, and when you had the idea, I think everybody was probably like leading on, okay, Billy has an idea. Like, we need to chase this idea down. And Billy knows Soju, right? Soju. So like, what's the difference, right? Like, so RTDs are, it's a pretty big market, but also there's
$8
a lot
billion
of players,
market.
right?
8
Right.
billion.
It's a
Yeah.
huge market.
Yeah.
There's a lot of players. I haven't seen any particularly like for soju. Soju is the most drank liquor on the planet, or
In
spirit on
terms
the
of
planet,
volume,
right? In
huge.
volume,
Yeah.
right? It beats
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
But that's mostly because like Koreans drink 4 bottles on average a day or something like that, which is insane. But like you said, there's been this general big trend for K everything, right?
Yep.
Like, well,
Yep.
you're in LA, so like it's not really a
It's
trend in
huge.
LA, like
Well,
just
yeah,
the way
that's
things are, right?
right.
But like for everybody else, it's kind of a trend, right? Like K
Yeah.
barbecue, like these things, K-pop, whatever. K liquor, there's companies trying, but like probably hasn't like taken a hold as of yet. And I think like LA Soju has a unique angle to that, like using a cocktail and using a mix. So why don't you like tell us a little bit more about that? I think people can think also it's like maybe it's a little bit niche, right? Like the type of things that you guys are using, but what's the plan for that? Like, how do you make it more ubiquitous? Just more people to take to it.
Okay, so first off, the huge RTD boom was in this carbonated malt, flavored with like, passion fruit, peach, strawberry.
Right.
Right? These are just flavored sparkling water with alcohol in it, generally
Right.
about 4%. Um, and what there wasn't in the market was uh, something that is more like a cocktail. So our first product is called the Sochelada, and it's soju plus michelada, thus. But another key thing is that we made it 7%. So,
Okay.
there's different reasons why people buy different, products. One is like flavor.
Right.
The other is how much alcohol is in this thing.
Right. Right.
People will look at a product and say, "Hey, 7%, I gotta try this thing."
Right.
So we kind of combined all the things that people would like
Okay.
into one product, and we just, it took us 2 years to make this because we had to get the formula, the taste right. We
Right.
had to get different licenses.
Right.
It took a while, but we created a product that is so, I mean, for now, so LA, right? You
Right.
got Sochelada, I mean, a Michelada,
Yeah.
which is very Mexican, Latino
Right.
focused. We have Soju that is very, very Korean focused, Korean
Right.
centric. And we combine the two, uh, making it also 7% outdoors.
Right. Oh, you can get outside, right? So where can people buy right now?
So this has been huge. So, our, I would say 90% of our sales
Uh-huh.
is to the Latino community,
Okay.
right? Latinos and Koreans have a very strong relationship in LA. They work
Uh-huh.
together, they party together, they eat together.
Right.
Out of any other ethnic or cultural groups
Yeah.
in LA, Koreans and Latinos, they've been kind of joined at the hips for decades, right?
Yeah.
So this product is kind of like, a tribute to that relationship,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
Koreans drink it a lot too, but they're more on the I don't want to say hipster millennial types. They're into like, hey, what's new? What's cool?
Yeah.
Latinos, they're just used to the michelada, but they look at it and they go, I love michelada. Soju, I know soju.
Yeah.
7%, I like 7%. There you go.
7%. Yeah. I mean, that's
It's
quite
very
high,
simple.
right? If you think about like the RTD, like you mentioned it, but you think about RTD or beer or like wine coolers, like 7% is largely unheard of, right? So, a few of those and you think it's 4 or 5%, you're gonna be over, right? You're gonna
No,
be over the
the
wall.
extra 2-3% makes a
Yeah.
huge difference,
Yeah, it's
right?
huge,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Um, I mean, I have to admit, when I golf, I used to drink the other micheladas before I had my
Yeah, yeah.
own. Um, and it's this 24-ounce can. It's like 4%, and it
It's a
it
lot of
it
like a lot
tastes
of volume, right? Yeah.
yeah, and it tastes like somebody just flavored it with like tomato, or it
Yeah.
just doesn't feel authentic. I
Yeah.
mean, but people, I mean, that industry in itself is still a $500 million market.
Wow.
So
Okay.
we saw an opportunity. We saw the trends, um, and we just thought, well, we hope we can't foresee anything. We just hope that,
Yeah.
hey, you know what, this could do well,
Yeah.
and so far it's been
Yeah.
doing well. So we're very
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah. And is there like a plan to make more well-known cocktails for the rest of the United States? Like what's the next wave, if it's not a secret, of getting soju into people's hands?
Well, number one, soju. in the U.S., even though in the world, soju is by volume the most,
Yeah.
popular, I mean, the most drank
Drink. Yeah. Right.
alcoholic beverage in the world. Yet in the U.S., I would say less than 95. I mean, only 5% know what soju really
Yeah.
is.
Right.
95%, they have no clue. They're used to just drinking their everyday regular stuff, White Claw,
Yeah.
Budweiser, Modelo,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, through our products, we're hoping to kind of introduce more people to soju, for
Yeah.
them to just go, hey, what is soju? It's a distilled spirit, and it's actually it could be cheap too, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, me and you, if we go to dinner, we'll have 4 bottles of soju.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine 4 bottles of soju at dinner each.
Yeah.
That's only $60. You
Yeah.
know how many cocktails that is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Three.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
cocktails, right? So, and 3 cocktails is not going to do anything for us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's clean, right? But like I said, this is our first product.
Yeah.
But our next products, we actually brought on a 3-star Michelin chef,
Okay.
who's going to be developing our future flavors. And
Right.
I actually had drinks with him last week, and he's like,
Right.
"Hey, what's the deal? What are we gonna do?" I said, "Hey, look,
Right.
what we need to do is we want to, through our cocktails, show our
Yeah.
appreciation to the different cultures and communities, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I don't want to do the typical Moscow Mule, for instance.
Right.
I want to make products or beverages that, like, there are like Ethiopian community,
Yeah.
Vietnamese community,
Uh-huh.
Persian community, like whatever it is that they drink in terms
Yeah.
of like spirits.
Yeah.
I kind of want to create those flavors, right?
Okay.
And so that we could introduce soju, and their cultural alcoholic beverage, and
Right.
kind of share all of that with the rest of the U.S. So
Right.
it's
Right.
it's kind of like wanting to bring people, communities together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's kind
Yeah.
of our
Okay.
goal, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. But that's also introducing like new flavors that we may not have seen, that readily, right? I mean, if you're
Exactly.
introducing a Korean flavor, it's just soju in a can. That's like Korean flavor, right? Don't add anything to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Just soju in a can, right? But like, yeah, like you said, there's like so many diverse ethnicities, particularly in the United States, like a huge melting pot, and there's going to be, a tons of interesting flavors.
Yeah.
Actually, not just in food, but also in drink that, you can bring to, but like, have you ever thought, like in the whole journey, and then like you end up at LA Soju now, have you ever thought you'd be, selling a Korean thing to America? Right? Go like 20, 25 years ago, right? And you say, someone's like, hey, you should sell soju in a can,
Yeah,
to Americans, right?
25 years ago, maybe it wasn't 25, maybe it was more like 30, 35 years ago. If you brought up sushi, General
Yeah.
America would have said, "What in the world's wrong with
Yeah.
you? Right?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
are you
Raw
eating
fish.
raw fish?"
Yeah.
Now it's, in terms of food,
Yeah.
it's probably one of the most popular foods
Yeah.
out there, right?
That's right. That's right.
I think getting to know people's cultures, what they
Yeah.
eat, what they drink, how they entertain themselves. The
Yeah.
more you get to know, the more you start. Everybody's the same. Everybody likes
Yeah.
to eat. Everybody likes to drink. And I
Yeah.
think the more you get to know about different cultures, I think the more you start liking people, right? I mean, look, a lot of my non-Korean friends, they
Yeah.
come up to me and they say, "Hey, when are we gonna go to Koreatown and have Korean barbecue?"
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, they don't say, "Hey, come over to my house." They say, "When are you taking us to Korean barbecue?"
Yeah. Yeah. It's a K-town. That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, and because of that, I mean, and drinking soju at the same time, obviously alcoholic beverage, you bond with people.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, what's there to hate when you eat
Yeah.
good
Eat and
food,
drink. Yeah.
drink, and
Right.
you're just high-fiving and hugging, and it
I
only
feel like
happens
that
with
should be the
alcohol, man.
theme, right? Yeah, LA Soju marketing is just high-fiving. Everyone's super happy.
No, that's exactly what I mean. I don't want to bring religion into it, but Jesus' first miracle was getting people to party with
Water to
putting water to wine, man.
wine.
Jesus
Nice,
knew what
yeah.
was up back then.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Well, actually, interestingly, on that note, like you bringing, soju into the States, you were talking about the title licenses before. That seems to be some, an opportunity for you,
Yeah.
that people may have largely missed, except for the soju companies, maybe.
No, well, soju companies in Korea know this exemption,
Okay.
right? Because well, how it happened was, I think it was in the 80s, mid to late 80s, there were these Korean restaurants with only a beer and wine license.
Yeah.
But because soju is a distilled spirit, they
Right.
couldn't sell it. So
Right.
imagine having Korean barbecue without soju. That's a
Yep.
travesty.
Oh my
So
God. Still
yeah,
neat.
no, that's why you don't go to Korean barbecue if they have no soju, right? Uh, so I guess it was either the Korean government or the Chamber of Commerce here in the U.S. representing the Koreans. They said, hey, at least in New York and California, where they have the highest concentration of Koreans outside of
Yeah.
Korea, they lobbied the state governments and they got an exemption
Yeah.
for soju made in Korea and imported. So if
Yeah.
you make soju here, which technically is not supposed to be called soju, by the way, if you
Yeah.
make it here, they don't fall under that exemption.
Yeah.
So there are some soju companies here in the U.S. That they're kind of stuck with having to sell their soju or soju seltzers only to establishments with a spirit license or Type 47.
Yeah. Right. So, like, I mean, that's like a big way of being able to bring in soju, right? And right now, I guess the exemption's only in California and New York.
Yeah,
But like, it kind of would make sense maybe that exemption even like goes even further as like, Korean restaurants spread potentially.
possibly.
Well, I guess somebody
But
has to fight for it. Yeah.
yeah, our growth strategy. I mean, look, Koreans, 99.998% of Koreans know what a soju is, right?
Yeah.
They grow up with it in their
Yeah.
house, you
Right.
know? Uh, but that market has been relatively stagnant,
Yeah.
meaning in terms of the masses in the US, right?
Right.
Unless you have a Korean friend who takes you to a Korean restaurant,
Right.
and you drink soju there, you're not going to be exposed to soju.
That's right. That's right.
But I don't want to target the Koreans because they already know. I want to target the 95% of America that
Right.
has no idea what soju is, right?
Right.
And
Right.
it's kind of like a gateway drink
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
real hard soju stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's like how like kind of like vodka and stuff got really popular, right? Like as a mixed drink. Like
Yeah.
people don't drink like vodka like Russians, right? Like just straight from the
Like,
glass.
yeah,
They,
right.
they mix it
Like
with a
in
bunch of
John
other
Wick.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, drink it like that. Or else
Yeah.
you become John Wick
Yeah.
that evening. So, you know, you've been on like some type of entrepreneurial path, I think, for the vast majority of your career, right? And so, these days, the KSC community and a lot of other people, and actually our last episode with Selena Lee, she was a banker, lawyer, and then she became an executive coach, right? So it's like big changes. And, even, we're a little bit different in terms of generation, but when I was growing up, we still wanted to be lawyers, bankers, etc., right? Doctors. But
Yeah.
now everybody wants to not do that. I mean, they've done it and they want to
Yeah.
break out. Do you have any advice for those people, right? Like, how do you take the leap? What's the reasoning, right? I think people have a lot of like cognitive dissonance when they're doing that. They're like, I shouldn't be doing this. My parents are going to be disappointed, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately inside, they want to do something more creative or they want to do something more innovative. And I do think the Hallyu or that K wave has given a lot of bravery or courage, right? For a lot of people and business ideas. But a lot of people are doing K beauty, like K food, etc. And I think that opportunity is there but I do think that most people still have some hesitation. So would you have any words of wisdom for folks to take the plunge? Oh, that's hesitation. Don't do it.
No, not. Look, I, I think there's two reasons why people jump into something.
Okay.
Number one is desperation.
Mm.
You don't know what to do. You're like,
Right.
what am I gonna do? I gotta do something. That's one. The other is passion. Right? And passion is a luxury item, right?
Yeah.
You can't have passion when you're desperate, when you're hungry. But so you gotta have one or the other, right? But at the same time, you gotta, when you start a business, you have to see, hey, what is the market out there, right? You have to kind of understand. I mean, that's the thing. If there's a demand for something similar, and you have something kind of very innovative, and you think, hey, people drink a lot of soju. Yeah. So if you make a zero sugar soju, fine. But that's, why you do things. There's desperation, there's passion, but then you got to look at, okay, what are you getting yourself into? If there's only, if the Michelada market was a, $1 million market, it's kind of like, you're not going to make money,
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's many things to think about, but at the end of the day, if you have the luxury of following your dreams or passion, of course, you should do it.
Yeah.
Right?
All right.
I think some of the things, if you look at the most, I would say, successful companies, they were started by people with that luxury of being able to take a chance, right? If they fail, hey, there's a backup.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To go to Harvard, people like Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, they started it and it's a great idea, but I'm not that I know their history, but I'm pretty sure they had a nice backup even before, right?
Yeah. Right.
But let's say you're not in that boat. I think you have to do a lot of studying of what you're trying to get into, and if you make it, will they come? I like to think if I make it, they'll come, right? But you gotta do the study on that. Will they really come? So if there's a market for it and you have a passion or desperation for it, and you could create it, and like even the soju this product, it took us 2 years. It took us 2 years for me to travel back and forth from Korea to find somebody who's going to be able to make it. I was very fortunate that I actually met a college hube. So I'm very fortunate. Maybe I come off as looking nice, which I am nice, but I look nice too. Like not nice, but nice person. And there's
a lot of qualifiers right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of qualifiers. He was willing to say, hey, you know what? I think you have a great product. I think you are a believable, trustworthy person. I think there's going to be a market for it. So we're going to help you out.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, I think a lot of the stars aligned in your favor
a lot
through the years of what you've built. I think that is the story here really, is that it's not just serendipitous that you met these people or that they wanted to back you or help you out. I mean, your relationship, your reputation had preceded you, as well as like your human connections and, what you've built over the years. Right. And I think people do kind of, they underestimate that impact, right? Like
it's
particularly
huge.
It's huge. It's like people are everything in reality, right? You can have an idea that seems super proprietary, but you need somebody to execute it and help you scale it, et cetera. And like, if that doesn't work, then it doesn't work anyway. And so like, I think that's really good advice because, a lot of people think that the startup journey begins with like the desperation or like kind of that toughness. and then it turns into a passion. But I used to think that it's the opposite way, right? Like it starts with the passion, and then in the middle you have only desperation, and then it somehow
Well, trust me, I've been desperate many
navigates out of it.
times.
Yeah. It just like goes into desperation, and somehow it has to like figure
All the
itself
time.
out. Yeah. And it always start as passion. And then like in the middle is the desperation. But I do think that's right. I think, you know, saying that people like do a lot of the starting because they didn't have anything to fall back on is, you know, statistically it's kind of low, right? Like it's
Right.
people do it because they can in a way, or their brain will allow them to take that risk, right?
Right.
And so I do think that's important. Do you have any last piece of advice as we wrap up for this episode for the community here? You know, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, both from Korea. We have people that came to the States to try to start their own. What's one last piece of advice you'd leave for them?
And it starts like we talked about. It starts before you take that plunge.
Yeah.
People invest not in products. You have to have a good product, number one. But number
Sure.
two, well, even before that, if you're not a person that can be trusted, can be believed, somebody who is known to not have integrity or is not honest, if you lack those things, doesn't matter what kind of product you have. People will not invest or want to buy your company or buy into your company or products. I think it starts beforehand, right?
Yeah.
You have to be a good person, with education, because all these things turn into opportunities, right?
Right.
You have to have all these prerequisites so that opportunities
They
show up on
present
your door.
themselves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
After that, obviously a lot of hard work. Right now I'm the delivery boy, man.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. One man shop.
In 2 months, we got some huge accounts,
Right.
and I'm delivering to places that are like 70 miles away, and I'm happy about it. I'm driving. Most people might say, "Hey, you know what? 70 miles of driving must suck in LA traffic."
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay.
I
Nice.
am like, I am just getting the word out there, and
Right.
every time I get it out there, more, people see it more, they drink it more, but
Yeah.
it gives me joy because people are finding out about it,
Yeah.
and through social media, um, we haven't spent a lot on social media, but
Yeah.
when I said we haven't spent a lot, we spent barely any money, right?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
me posting
Right.
stuff on, Instagram, but people find out about it. People right now, for some reason, they want to try new things.
Okay.
And there's always been a thing about anti-big corporations, things like
Right.
that.
Right.
I'm selling it. I'm selling my product to mom and pop liquor stores, mom and pop Korean barbecue, Mexican restaurants, whoever will listen, whoever will taste it. But I enjoy it. I enjoy delivering every time. I get to meet the people, even though 70 miles, but on the way I'm on the phone, I'm, doing other things. But I have to honestly say I love what I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Billy, we're going to wrap up for this episode. Where can they find LA Soju? Where can they find more about LA Soju online and socials?
Our website's not up. Sorry.
Okay. There you go. The true startup story.
Instagram, that's where we have a lot of videos, images of who carries. I love giving props to people who carry our stuff because I'm so thankful for them. I want their business to do well. And there's a list of retailers on there. There's videos of people who love it. That's where we get most. That's where you're gonna get most of the information. Hey, once you look at the Instagram, you're gonna be like, oh, "This is where they sell it. This is what it tastes like." Oh, okay. I want to try it.
Awesome.
I think it's the heartfelt message that people like.
Yeah. So we're going to be sharing all of the social Instagram, and when the website's ready, you'll let us know. We'll share with the community. If you have any questions for Billy, hit us up in the comments. We'll make sure they get to Billy. If you have any updates for us, Billy, like next time on, business progress or people interested, we'll definitely have them reach out to you. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode.
Sorry, Sam. One funny thing.
Yeah,
Instagram,
of course.
at LA_Soju.
Okay, that's easy. LA_Soju.
Follow.
Follow on Instagram. All right. Thanks a lot, Billy.
Hey, thanks, Sam. I'll talk to you next time, brother.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.